It was the third year of my intermittent amnesia when I heard my husband Luis Marquez chatting with one of his friends. Dude, seriously, your wife blacks out every few months, and you make us take turns pretending to be you. What if one of us falls for her? Luis swirled the whiskey in his glass, that smug grin plastered on his face. Relax, Carmen is frigid. As long as you don't hit on her, she's not going to be looking for that kind of action. Just a heads up, play your parts but keep your hands to yourselves. She's still my wife. When I'm done playing, I'll come home. For the past 3 years, every man who had held my hand, kissed me, or shared my bed when I had memory lapses wasn't actually Luis. 3 years, 9 memory wipes, 9 substitute husbands. What they didn't know was that I had been faking my amnesia for the last 2 years. I heard the front door open, and my 9th husband walked in, finding me zoning out on the couch. His voice was warm and gentle. Carmen, I'm home. I looked at the man at the door, feigning confusion. Who are you? Are you my husband? I thought my husband's name was Luis Marquez. He froze for a second and then stammered. No, I'm not. I'm a friend of your husband's. Don't worry, Carmen. I'll call Luis right now and have him come home. He rushed to get the phone, clutching it tightly. Luis's voice came through again. Carmen has amnesia. Who's next? Get over here and relieve me. I eavesdropped from behind the curtains, listening to the guys on speakerphone. Dude, Carmen is too clingy. You have to watch her 24/7. No thanks. Yeah, she's great, but man, she's intense. A guy needs some freedom. Why don't you just go home yourself, Luis? No way, Luis dragged on. I'm not done having fun. Who's going to take my shift? Come on, bros before hoes. Then a voice interrupted the complaints. I'll do it. It was Santiago Gallardo, Luis's best friend, famous for being the Ice King. Always composed, never attached. He'd been single forever. Or so the rumors said. When Luis first proposed the fake husband plan, Santiago was the only one who had objected. Why was he suddenly volunteering? 30 minutes later, the door clicked. Santiago walked in, backlit by the hallway light. Carmen, I'm home, he said, his usually controlled voice having a strange tone. I stared at the tall, devastatingly handsome man. Are you my husband, Luis Marquez? Yes, Santiago murmured, clearing his throat. Sorry, I was working late. His phone rang. He gave me a quick, apologetic glance and stepped out onto the balcony. I heard Luis's casual, smug voice. Oh, hey Santiago. I forgot to tell you, just hold her hand, give her a hug, but don't you dare sleep with her. Got it? She's still my wife. Understood? Understood, Santiago replied in a flat voice. For 3 years, no matter who pretended to be Luis, they never crossed the line. Just hand-holding and hugs. No pictures around the house, no past. No friends. I was an orphan, a conveniently isolated amnesiac. They thought I had no idea, but this time I was done pretending. I walked up and hugged him from the waist. Honey, even though I don't remember anything, just seeing you feels right. You have to be my husband. I squeezed him tight, letting my hand linger on his abs. Santiago tensed up, then gently pushed me away. Is something wrong? I asked, feigning innocence. You don't like me now that I've lost my memory? No, it's not that, Santiago said quickly, his eyes darting away. I do like you. That night, we shared a bed. Neither of us said a word about the performance we were putting on, but we both knew. The next day, Santiago took me to a bar. He said he wanted me to reacquaint myself with his friends. As we walked into the private room, I saw Luis making out with a blonde. Santiago cleared his throat, interrupting them. Luis looked up, startled, then casually straightened up. Hey, I'm Santiago Gallardo, Luis's childhood friend, he said. And this is my girlfriend, Laura Ventura. Of course, I said coldly. Laura, Luis's high school girlfriend. They had broken up once due to family issues but had reconnected while I was supposedly losing my mind. She was the reason Luis wasn't ready to come back. Luis's other friends, the substitute husbands, were also there, cracking jokes as if nothing was wrong. Carmen, you lost your memory again? Poor thing. Luis is such a good guy for sticking by you. Yeah, you're so lucky. I smiled sarcastically. Santiago sat me down on the couch next to him. I picked up a piece of fruit and fed it to him. Honey, eat. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Luis watching. I leaned in close to Santiago, brushing my lips against his ear. Honey, you were so rough last night. It still hurts. Santiago froze. His hand squeezed mine awkwardly. Honey, not here. Luis's knuckles turned white around his glass. Laura, sitting next to him, smiled sweetly and said with venom, Carmen, you're incredible. Chapter 1. The game begins. It was the third year of my intermittent amnesia when I heard my husband Luis Marquez chatting with one of his friends in the study, thinking I was asleep. Dude, seriously. Your wife blacks out every few months, and you make us take turns pretending to be you. What if one of us falls for her? Luis swirled a whiskey in his glass with that smug grin he always wore. She's still my wife. When I'm done playing, I'll come home. For the past 3 years, every man who had held my hand, who had kissed me or shared my bed, was not really Luis. 3 years. 9 memory wipes, 9 substitute husbands, all chosen, prepared, instructed, as if I were a forgotten doll who just needed to be kept entertained while the real owner lived his life. What they didn't know is that I had been faking my amnesia for the last 2 years. A perfectly calculated charade. First it was real. Yes, the blow to the head, the confusion, the fear. But then I understood how Luis took advantage of every gap, how he replaced me, how he played with my memories and my world. And then I decided that if they wanted to act, I would give them the best show of their lives. That night, the 9th Luis walked in. I was sitting on the couch watching a soap opera. I feigned confusion instantly. Who are you? Asked. My eyes wide. Are you my husband? I thought my husband's name was Luis Marquez. He froze for a moment like all the others the first time. Then he stammered. No, I'm not. I mean, yes. You just sometimes forget things. But you're fine. I'm going to call Luis. Yes. I watched him dial hastily, nervously, and heard Luis's voice on the other end. Carmen has amnesia. Again. Who's next? Get over here and relieve me. I paid attention. The speakerphone was on. Dude, Carmen is too clingy. You have to watch her 24/7, one complained. No thanks. Yeah, she's pretty, but man, she's intense. A guy needs some freedom, added another. Why don't you go yourself, Luis? One asked, tired. No way, Luis laughed. I'm not done having fun. Who's going to take my shift? Come on. You cowards. Silence. And then a firm, dry voice I didn't expect. I'll do it. Santiago Gallardo, his best friend, the only one who had refused the plan when it started, the Ice King, they called him. Always distant, always controlled. Why was he accepting now? 30 minutes later, the door opened and Santiago entered. Dark suit, impassive expression. He almost seemed real. Almost made me doubt. Carmen, I'm home, he said. I looked at him with my head tilted. Are you Luis Marquez? Yes, he replied after a brief pause. Sorry, I was working late. His phone rang. He went out to the balcony. I followed him silently and listened. Hey, Santiago. I forgot to tell you. Just hold her hand, give her a hug, but don't you dare sleep with her. Got it? She's still my wife. Understood. Understood, Santiago replied without emotion. I returned to the couch before he came back. I stood up and hugged him. He was cold, tense. I smiled inwardly. Honey, even though I don't remember anything, just seeing you feels right. You have to be my husband. My hand casually slid across his abdomen. He tensed up. Then he gently pushed me away. Is something wrong? I asked in a sweet voice. You don't like me now that I've lost my memory? No, it's not that. Of course I like you, Santiago said without looking me in the eye. We slept in the same bed that night in silence. He on his back, me staring at the ceiling, planning. The next morning, Santiago took me to a private bar where Luis's friends used to meet. He told me he wanted me to see familiar faces. Translation. He wanted to maintain the illusion in public. No. We entered the room, and the first thing I saw was Luis kissing a blonde. Santiago cleared his throat. Luis looked up, surprised, and then feigned naturalness. Hello, I'm Santiago Gallardo, Luis's childhood friend. And this is my girlfriend, Laura Ventura. Laura. The men who had lied to me stroked my hair, whispered lies in a fake voice. Carmen, You lost your memory again? Luis is so good for staying with you. You're so lucky. I smiled back at them. I sat down next to Santiago and took a grape from the fruit plate. Honey, open your mouth, I said, offering it to him. He hesitated. Then he accepted it without expression. I leaned into his ear. Honey, you were so rough last night. It still hurts. Santiago froze. I kept smiling. Luis squeezed his glass until his knuckles turned white. Laura turned to me with poisoned kindness. Carmen, you're incredible. And I was, because unlike them, I knew what I was doing. This was just the beginning. Chapter 2. The Art of Selective Memory. Faking amnesia isn't as hard as it seems. The tricky part is faking that you're remembering. That requires precision. You can't improvise. Every memory has to be a tool, a seed, a carefully planted provocation. The morning after the encounter with Laura, I came downstairs in a borrowed robe. Santiago was in the kitchen making coffee. He was tense, as if he still didn't know if he was in a game or a trap. I stopped in the doorway and tilted my head. What's wrong? I asked softly. Are you upset about what I said last night? No, he replied quickly, too quickly. It's just that it was unnecessary. I approached slowly, letting my steps sound like those of a woman without direction, without certainty. I caressed the cup he was holding. I had a weird dream last night, I murmured. I'm not sure if it was a dream or a memory. Santiago stood still. He didn't speak. He knew I didn't talk about dreams for no reason. I dreamed that you gave me a light green jade ring. You said it protected me from lies. Santiago frowned. I never gave you that. I know, I whispered. That's why I wonder if it was real, because it felt so clear. Silence. The doubt. The first breaking point. I saw it in his eyes. He didn't know if I was confusing memories, if I was being manipulated, or if I was manipulating them all. Perfect. Over the next few days, I dedicated myself to scattering false memories like breadcrumbs. Small details that no one could confirm, but that everyone was afraid to deny. I told one of the former Luises that I remembered his voice, that it calmed me at night. I thanked him for being so sweet and he turned pale. I told another that I remembered his perfume mixed with blood. I asked him if I had ever fallen, if I had been hurt, if he had helped me. Of course, he said, hesitating. Yes, I think so. A lie. But he was no longer sure. They were starting to collapse. Guilt does that. It distorts reality until you no longer know what you did and what you only allowed. At home, Santiago had become quieter, more attentive. He would bring me tea in the mid-afternoon, help me change the sheets. He would ask if I wanted him to call the doctor. I would answer with my gaze. A mixture of gratitude and something more indefinite. I confused him on purpose. One night, while we were watching a movie, I let my head fall on his shoulder. I tensed slightly, as if something had ignited in my mind. What was that? He asked carefully. Your scent, I said, closing my eyes. It reminded me of something, of a hug, of a rainy day. He said nothing. And then, lower, Santiago, was I ever in love with you? He looked at me. He took too long to answer. I shouldn't tell you that, he finally murmured. Why not? Because I'm not Luis. And you're confused. I watched him in silence. I noticed that for the first time he was speaking to me without the disguise, without the script. He was starting to break too. Luis, for his part, couldn't stand the lack of control. He called me 3 times in 1 week. I didn't answer any of them. I sent him a simple message. I'm starting to remember. Please don't confuse me now. Shortly after, a bouquet of flowers arrived without a card. But the perfume was Laura's. Message received. I know how to play dirty too. The next day, I came down to breakfast in a tight white dress, my hair loose, my smile intact. Santiago looked at me as if he didn't know whether he wanted to kiss me or run away. Is something wrong? I asked as I poured myself some juice. You shouldn't dress like that, he murmured. Like what? Like that. So provocative. Provocative. I laughed with innocence. Santiago, I'm just a woman trying to remember who she is. Don't you think it's fair that I feel pretty, even if it's just for you? He watched me for another second, then turned and went out to the patio. And so, stone by stone, word by word, I was rewriting the story they had invented for me. I wasn't going to wait anymore. The next stage of the plan was already underway. Chapter 3. Dangerous Fragments. The secret isn't in what you remember. The real power is in what others believe you've forgotten. One afternoon, while Santiago was in the shower, I dropped a black-covered notebook on the bed. At first glance, it looked like an old, unimportant diary. The pages were written in a handwriting that imitated mine, rounded, soft, but with anxious strokes. I had practiced calligraphy for weeks. I left it open to a page titled, Day 73. I am not his wife. When Santiago came out, he saw it. I didn't say anything, and neither did he. But I saw him read. I saw how his eyes were fixed on each sentence. Luis is not the same man I remember. Sometimes his voice changes, sometimes he calls me by another name. He tells me I'm his, but I don't feel like I belong to anyone. Sometimes I wake up with the feeling of having been touched, but my body has no marks. Other times I see a face in dreams, one I don't recognize when I wake up, but that makes me feel safe. I hold on to that other, to the one who might have been real. I don't know if I'm crazy or if someone wants me to be. The notebook remained there all night. Santiago didn't mention a word, but his gaze toward me changed. From caution to compassion, from guilt to unease. He had begun to fear me. Good. 2 days later, I met Marcos, the third Luis, for coffee. I pretended to want to consult him about a supposedly blurry memory. He arrived wearing dark glasses, clearly nervous. Carmen, I don't know if this is a good idea, he said as soon as he sat down. Luis told me not to see you without his permission. I smiled slowly. Do you remember the time you read me poetry on the rooftop? That night when I thought we were going to die of cold. Marcos looked at me, stunned. You remember that? I dreamed of you reciting Benedetti to me. Don't save yourself. It was a dream. He swallowed. He nodded. It was real. That night you were crying. You said you didn't understand who you were. I seized the moment. I looked down. I let a contained tear threaten to fall. Marcos, was I ever abused when I couldn't remember? He straightened up. Uncomfortable. No, Carmen, I swear. I never. I only took care of you. We always took care of you. We always took care of you. He didn't know what he had just said, but it was enough. The next was Julian. With him I wasn't so subtle. I showed him a photo on my phone, edited with an app, where we appeared holding hands on a beach we never set foot on. This appeared in my gallery. I don't know who you are, but you seem important to me. Julian was frozen, then nodded with a hint of feigned nostalgia. Yes, we were close, very close, until your husband came back. A lie. He hadn't even been there during his shift. Every word they said incriminated them more, and I saved everything. Recordings, screenshots, altered photos. Not to destroy them. Not yet. First, I wanted them to destroy each other. Guilt is a cage without bars. That night, I found Santiago with the diary in his hands. He was holding it as if it were heavy. Is all this true? He asked in a low voice. Were you abused, deceived? I approached, placed my hand on his. What do you think? He didn't answer. His silence was enough for me. He looked at me as if I were an open wound that no one dared to touch. As if for the first time he was wondering if he was on the right side. And perhaps at that very moment he was no longer. Chapter 4. The Inverted Cage. Before, they used to lock me in with lies. Now I trapped them with half-truths. Santiago started spending more time at home. He would prepare breakfast. He would leave flowers on my pillow. They weren't romantic gestures, not yet. They were guilty ones. As if by loading me with details, he wanted to redeem himself for something he wasn't telling me. But I already knew. One night we had dinner in silence. The television was on just to disguise the mutism between us. Then, without looking up from his plate, he murmured, "You're not sick, are you?" I held his gaze. "And you're not Luis Marquez, are you?" He pursed his lips and nodded. "I knew it from the beginning," he added. "But I convinced myself you were better off this way." Without remembering, I let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Or were you better off this way?" Without having to feel guilty for seeing me as the spoils of a sick game. You don't answer to guilt. You live it. And Santiago was breathing it every second. I could see it. The Ice King was starting to fracture, melting little by little. The next day I broke the script. During breakfast. I want to know why. And if I don't, someone invented it for me. Pale. Silent. A nervous tick in his jaw. I approached and took his hand. You're not obligated to help me. Just don't stop me. We didn't go to the hospital that day, but the next I found the diary on my nightstand, half burned in the fireplace. His way of warning me. Don't continue. Perfect. I didn't need the diary anymore. Now I had another tool. Reconstructed memory. One by one, I started leaving clues on private social media, encrypted posts, messages with specific dates, and a secret account where I pretended to have recovered fragments. Today I dreamed of a spiral staircase. There was a man who promised me love and exchanged me for fear. I remember the voices. They always changed, but none were real. I'm going to remember everything, and when I do, they won't be able to hide. The substitute husband started writing to me in private, alarmed, fearful. They offered to meet to explain things. One even told me, if you go to the hospital, you're going to get into trouble. Not for you, for Luis. He's not going to let you expose him. So you knew? I replied. Silence. Then he told us it was temporary, that it was for your own good. They used that phrase like a mantra. For your own good. As if repeating it would forgive them. For my own good, they lied to me. For my own good, they rotated me like an object. For my own good, they made me doubt my own reality. Now, for their own good, they were going to pay. That night, I pretended to have another episode. I fell to the floor, shaking while Santiago shouted my name. I woke up sobbing, whispering, Luis, what did they do to me? I saw Santiago step back as if I were possessed. And maybe I was, by something more powerful than any illness. Clarity. That was the last time he tried to control me. From then on, every time he looked at me, he did so as if I were no longer the victim, as if he finally knew that he was the one trapped with me, and not the other way around. Chapter 5. Echoes of a ghost named Carmen. The woman I was, Carmen Marquez, died somewhere between the first blackout and the third actor. But something remained, something silent, cold, and patient. It wasn't revenge yet, it was reconstruction. I would look at myself in the mirror as if I were inspecting the rubble after a fire. The problem with losing your memory is that you learn to depend on others. The problem with faking that you've lost it is that they become confident. They think they can invent you from scratch. And that's what I did. I reinvented myself with what they offered me. A weak wife for Luis, a hothouse flower for his friends. A doll who only needed to smile, forget, and wait for the next turn. But Carmen had been awake for a long time, and now she was speaking. That day, I received a voicemail from Laura, Luis's girlfriend. I know what you're doing. I replied with a message without a voice, just a photo. A digital copy of the marriage certificate between Luis Marquez and Carmen Ventura. Signed, sealed, valid. With a note. You can be the mistress. I am the legal one. Santiago saw it and said nothing. He didn't need to. By that point, he knew he was in territory where his rules didn't apply. Luis, on the other hand, called. Not me, Santiago. What is she doing? Is she breaking the deal? I don't know, he replied in a tired voice. Maybe she doesn't want to be part of the show anymore. Well, she should think twice. If she ruins me, she ruins herself too. A lie. It was always his fear that I would remember, that I would speak, that I would prove that behind his perfect story of a sick wife was a pathetic theater. That same day I went to the bank. I sat down with the manager, a woman with short hair and a precise attitude. But I'd like to see the movements of the last 3 years. What I found turned my stomach. Luis had been slowly emptying the joint accounts with small transactions to companies he himself had registered under false names. He had also sold a property that was in both our names. All during my supposed crises. I stood up with a smile. Before I left, I gave the manager a card. In case my husband asks, I'm preparing a lawsuit. And yes, this visit will be part of the evidence. The manager nodded with the delicacy of someone who has seen many cowardly husbands. When I returned, Santiago was waiting for me at the entrance. You went to the bank? Yes. I said without embellishment. I went to count the ghosts who were robbing me in the name of love. He said nothing. He looked down. Are you going to destroy Luis? No, I smiled. I'm going to let him do it himself. I'm just going to push the first dominoes. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom, took out the old cell phone I had hidden in the ventilation grill, and turned on the secondary account. I uploaded the bank documents, the photos, the voice recordings. I titled it, "This is how a husband turns you into a ghost, and how you decide to come back to haunt them." The video lasted 5 minutes. In 24 hours it had 14,000 views. Carmen was no longer a memory, she was a viral threat. Chapter 6. Luis Marquez, the supporting actor. The next morning, I woke up to Santiago's phone vibrating incessantly on the nightstand. Aren't you going to answer? I asked without getting up. He looked at me. The eternal protagonist of his own drama had become secondary, a faceless silhouette in an anonymous video. In the afternoon, I received an email from Laura. What are you trying to do? Drag us all down? If you go down, you go down too. Remember that. I replied with a single line. I already fell and I survived. You're just starting to stumble. That night, Santiago and I went for a walk. The city was different when you walked through it in silence. No makeup, no lies. The lights weren't as bright, but the air was more honest. Why did you do it? I asked him. Do what? Agree to be my 9th husband. Pretend this was normal, participate in his circus. Santiago took a long time to answer. We walked half a block before he spoke. Because you were the only real part in the midst of all that. I stopped. Real? Yes. We were all playing, but you were the only one who seemed to be living it for real. Even if you were faking, you could tell you were suffering, that you were hurting, that you wanted to understand. I looked at him for a long time. There was no judgment in his words. Just a kind of sadness that made me feel more seen than in all my years of marriage. And now? I asked. Now I think you're capable of anything. And that scares me. I didn't know what to answer. But for the first time it didn't bother me that someone was afraid of me. Luis appeared 2 days later. No flowers, no apologies, just poorly disguised arrogance. He walked in as if it were still his house, as if I were still his property. Where's Santiago? He's out. And you, what is this? A game? You want attention? Are you going crazy from not having me around? I let out a dry laugh. Luis, for the first time in years I'm sane. And you're trembling. He approached threateningly. Don't you dare drag me down with you, Carmen. Everything you have, I gave you. You gave me? No, Luis. You took from me. You emptied me. You turned me into a woman without a memory, so you could write your own story over it. His eyes darkened, but he said nothing. Before he left, he turned to me and snapped. No one is going to believe you. I threw a folder at him. That's why I don't talk, I just show. Inside were bank statements, copies of the blank-signed powers of attorney, photos of him with Laura on dates when he swore he was taking care of me, recovered audio of his voice planning the handovers. Luis wasn't a violent monster. He was something worse. A charismatic monster, the kind that convinces others that everything is your fault. This isn't over, he said before leaving. No, I said. It's going to get worse. That night, I uploaded a second video, this time with names, with dates, with censored documents, with pauses that hurt more than screams. And I titled it, Sometimes Madness is the Only Refuge When Everyone Convinces You That You're Worthless. The next morning I had a voicemail from Santiago. Carmen, they're looking for you on social media. On the street, in the media. Luis is furious. Laura too. And I don't know if I want to keep pretending. I smiled. No one was pretending anymore. Now everyone was playing my game. Chapter 7. The skin they stole from me. When someone snatches your identity, you don't realize it immediately. At first, it's as if you've simply forgotten small things. Where you put your keys. What you dreamed last night. What your own laughter felt like. Afterward, all that's left is a recycled version of yourself that others invented. Someone else's skin, a poorly written script. Because it spoke with that tone that victims have when they no longer care about being believed. The tone of someone who has decided to survive without asking for permission. On social media. They called me the invisible wife, the blackout woman, the elegant victim. Some defended me, others hated me, but everyone was talking about me. Luis tried to respond. A certain Mariana published a thread saying she had also been a caregiver for Carmen during a period of amnesia, but not to help her, but as part of the staff hired to lie to me. We were asked to follow a script, never to question, never to tell the truth. Carmen would ask things, but they told us not to make her think that it could get worse. Wrote a nurse with a conscience more dangerous than any lawyer. Santiago took me to the countryside, to an old cabin that belonged to his grandfather. He said he needed to think, that I should breathe too. The first night I woke up with a start. I had dreamed of a white room, a gurney, a bright lamp in my face, voices saying I should rest, that I should forget. When I opened my eyes, I was drenched in sweat. Santiago was holding my hand. It came back. No, it never left, I whispered. It wasn't a memory, it was an internal scar, an emotional burn. Luis didn't just take my dignity. He even stole my right to trust what I felt. The next morning, I asked Santiago to help me with something. I want to go back to that clinic. The one for the supposed treatment. Are you sure? No, but I can't let my story be made up of only fragments that others chose for me. It was harder than I imagined. We pretended to be a couple interested in a similar treatment. They gave us a tour. I recognized the hallways, the wings, the smell. I saw a chair where I used to sit. Do you remember anything? The guide asked. No, but my body does, I said. I asked to use the restroom. Instead, I snuck into the staff archive. I didn't find physical folders, but I found an unlocked computer. I searched for my name and there it was. Carmen Ventura Marquez, patient with unconfirmed diagnosis. Psychological interventions suggested by spouse's referral. And the most important detail. Procedure authorization signed under medication. It wasn't treatment. It was manipulation in a white coat. My hands were shaking. I took photos of the screen, of the file, of everything. I went back to the room as if nothing had happened. Santiago looked at me and knew. You have it. Yes. Are you ready? No, but I never was and I still survived. That night, I didn't publish a video. I wrote a letter, a single page, and sent it to 3 media outlets without a signature, without drama, just with the attached documents. My name was used to justify treatments I didn't ask for, diagnoses that didn't exist, and a story that doesn't belong to me. This is the first time I am speaking as myself, not as the wife, not as the patient, not as the victim, as Carmen. A broken skin, but mine. When I woke up, I received a message from Santiago. They're looking for you. This time not to silence you, but to listen to you. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to be myself. Chapter 8. The Trial Without a Courtroom. Life doesn't always provide for real courtrooms. Sometimes the trial happens in cafes, in anonymous comments, in conversations between strangers. There is no judge or defense attorney. Only the echo of what is said and what is left unsaid. Luis was not arrested or officially pointed at, but something more lethal than any criminal accusation began to surround him. Public doubt. The calls started coming to his office. First discreetly, then annoyingly, then directly aggressive. Is it true that your wife was institutionalized without consent? Why were other men living in your house during your absence? His legal team recommended he emotionally disengage from the case. Laura, his beloved high school blonde, disappeared from his social media without a farewell, without a scandal. Just a cold void that screamed, I don't want to sync with you either. I, on the other hand, did not speak. I gave no interviews, accepted no book deals. I just lived. I went to the movies, bought a book without checking the synopsis, changed my haircut. And at night, I walked with Santiago in silence. He never asked for explanations, just looked at me as if he knew the worst punishment had already been inflicted, no longer needing the one who destroyed you. One afternoon, I received an invitation. Luis wanted to meet in a public place, without lawyers, without cameras. I accepted. The cafe was discreet, the kind that doesn't have a name on the door. Luis was already sitting. The same expensive suit, the same rehearsed smile, but his eyes, those had lost their arrogance. There was anxiety in his blink. Carmen. he said, as if that name still belonged to him. I sat down. You have 5 minutes. He took a breath. He already had his speech ready. Of course. I knew him too well. Everything got out of control. It wasn't my intention for you to get to this point. I just wanted to protect you, keep you in a safe place so you wouldn't suffer. Why did you need me sick, Luis? He hesitated. Because a strong Carmen didn't need me. And I didn't know how to exist without being needed. I laughed not because it was funny but because it was pathetic. You pretended to be my savior while you were turning me into a prisoner. The worst part wasn't the confinement. It was the performance, the sweet words, the empty gestures. Luis looked down. What do you want? I took out an envelope, put it on the table. There was a time when I believed that shame was a fire that would consume me, that every glance, every whisper, every behind-the-back comment was a flame destined to burn what little was left of me. But time and betrayal taught me something more cruel and, at the same time, liberating. The fire doesn't burn one who has already burned from the inside. The days after the agreement with Luis were strangely silent, as if the calm that precedes the storm had settled in my life. But I didn't want calm. I wanted to be reborn. So, while Santiago returned to his routines, I immersed myself in files, in old diaries, in the memories I managed to rescue from the fog. Each fragment I gathered was a brick to rebuild my inner house, a place where no one could ever lock me in again. Luis, for his part, slowly disappeared from the news. However, the silence of his public fall resonated louder than his arrogant screams. Sometimes I found myself thinking about him, not with hatred, but with the cold distance of someone contemplating a broken doll. And I understood that it wasn't my story that was broken. It was his. One night, Santiago and I were walking through a park illuminated only by yellow lampposts. He took my hand. You know what I like about you? What? That you are no longer the woman who is afraid of losing. Now you are the one who wants to fly. I smiled at him. I felt like the owner of my body, of my steps, of my future again. Because I had learned something that no harm could take away from me, the power to choose. When a flame goes out, it doesn't leave ash, it leaves a faint light. And I was ready to shine again. Chapter 10. The Final Act. Luis always believed that life was a stage and that he was the undisputed protagonist, but he forgot one detail. The audience can also change the script. After signing my freedom, I thought the final chapter would come quickly, but true endings are not always written in red ink or with thunderous applause. Sometimes they are silent, small, almost invisible. One Friday afternoon, I received an anonymous message with a photo. Luis, alone in a cheap restaurant, without his expensive suit, without his calculated smile. A common and empty man. It was the last act he could offer, the fall without an audience. I decided to do nothing with the image. I let time do its work. Santiago and I began to plan something different. A trip far from the shadows, far from the lies. Not because we were running away, but because we wanted to breathe without remembering. But in rebuilding oneself, Luis was just a secondary character in my story, and I was finally the author. The last time I walked through the door of that house, I felt a mixture of fear and relief. Fear for everything I had left behind,